Joining me now to discuss the big stories of the week is the Australian newspaper's Washington correspondent, Adam Creighton. Adam, thanks so much for joining us here on the U.S. Report tonight. Now, I want to talk about what's going on with Iran, where the risk of conflict seems to be stepping up with a lot of mixed signals, but ultimately the White House and the Pentagon indicating that there will be more retaliations for that drone strike, which killed 3 American soldiers in Jordan. What is the latest on this, and why is the White House telegraphing its strategic intentions so closely to the people it's supposed to be fighting?
Yes. Well, to be honest, James, there's not really a huge update from when Joe Biden himself said yes, that he had decided on what the response was going to be. Since that yes, which I think was a couple of days ago, the response hasn't actually happened yet. And the White House seems to be indicating that they're not going to strike Iran, the territory of Iran, and possibly not even any Iranian property. I mean, the Iranian government itself has made pretty clear to the US, I understand, that if the Biden administration does strike Iran, then Iran will retaliate and hit various US assets in the Middle East. Look, I think the US is in a very difficult position here because, if it does too much, it could start a war in the region. But of course, if it doesn't do enough, then it could invite more of these attacks on its troops. And then, of course, the further difficulty is that the group that has claimed responsibility for the attack that killed those 3 Americans is not technically under control of Iran. I mean, it's a proxy. It's funded by Iran. So you could make the same argument. The US obviously funds a lot of countries, but is the US really responsible for the actions of those other countries? You could have an argument about that. So look, it's a difficult situation, and I assume that part of the delay is just because there's indecision in the White House and the Pentagon.
But what then, Adam, message does that send to Iran when you're continuing what's clearly the failed Obama administration policy of trying to balance Israel and Iran? Clearly, this is not going to be tenable in the long run, is it?
Yeah, look, the politics is really bad for the US. For the Democrats, of course, because there was the $6 billion issue a few 6 months or so ago, and of course that's really played into Republicans' hands. They've argued that this money has helped fuel various acts of Iranian terrorism, of course the October 7 attacks, and then now also the more recent attacks on US troops. And that may well be true. We don't exactly know, but certainly the whole issue has been a disaster for Democrats.
Indeed. Now, speaking of Democrats, I want to move on to Democrat Squad member Ilhan Omar. Now, viewers of this show will know a lot about her sort of history, but now shocking video has emerged of her giving a speech to a group of Somali Americans, essentially pledging her loyalty to Somalia first and saying that she is actually basically an agent of that government, not the United States. Here's a tiny bit.
marka taas ka seexda reer Minnesota gabadhii Congress u dirsateen way idinka warhaysaa sidaad idinka u dareemaysiin dantaas ay u dareemeen madaxweyne Xasan Sheekhna.
Now, for years, people have joked about her being the Democrat member for Somalia, but, I mean, seriously, this is a very bad look for her and the squad. Are the Democrats going to take any action against her, or is she remaining on the protected list?
Well, the Democrats have said that they won't, but certainly lots of Republicans have asked that she resign or that she be censured. I think there's a motion for vote next week, but I seriously doubt that it will succeed. I mean, it's extremely hard to remove members of Congress unless there's overwhelming majorities. Look, I mean, this is the problem with multiculturalism, which I think we've all seen around the world very clearly since October the 7th, that, you have people with a divided loyalties to other places. And, this is not just a problem in the US, it's a problem everywhere. I mean, to be slightly in her defense, there's a lot of argument over the translations. There's a problem that so few people can understand Somalian in the US and also in Australia. It's extremely hard to verify. And so they've had to get, special UN interpreters, and there's a number of interpretations. And she says that the one that's being used to smear her is wrong. So honestly, who knows? I've got zero ability with Somalian, so I don't know. But these things always become extremely political. One side jumps on the other all the time. So what she said, I think, was foolish, but it's quite possible it's been exaggerated too. Who knows?
Well, maybe we can agree that it's probably not the most foolish thing Ilhan Omar has ever said. Let's move over to the other side of the aisle here, to Donald Trump. More legal woes now. He's off the back of his loss in what I think was frankly a ludicrous defamation case brought by E. Jean Carroll.
It is.
But beyond that, even though I think Trump's going to win the appeal on that, the damage is done. Meanwhile, where are things up to on some of these other cases? I want to get a bit of an update from you on this, Adam, because I feel like these things are going to keep dropping out over the weeks and months ahead as part of this broader attempt to stop Donald Trump from being the nominee, or being the president, I mean.
Yeah, well, certainly the other civil case in New York related to the valuation of Mar-a-Lago, the decision there, or at least the penalty there, was meant to be brought down on the 31st of January. And of course, that came and went, and we still don't have a penalty. So I don't know what's going on there, but that's meant to be $370 million. So, you know, much larger than the $83 million from the Carroll case. I mean, in my view, both cases are just completely ridiculous and shocking. You know, very, very bad indictment on the US legal system. And he's going to appeal both of those. But I mean, as you suggested, it's a lot more complicated than that. They're just the two civil cases. Then you've got the 4 criminal cases, which are still yet to go to trial. You've got the 2 federal ones, the one on the documents and the one on January the 6th, if you like. And then there's the Georgia case, which is also broadly related to the election. And then finally, the hush money case, which is in New York. Now, you know, rather than go through each of those individually, I think the main point is that it's looking more and more likely, because of the various appeals that the Trump side has gone through, including probably to the Supreme Court on whether the president is immune from prosecution. These trials are being pushed back and back and back, and it's looking more likely that they won't happen until after the presidential election in November. And of course, if that happens, and if Trump wins, then basically he can pardon himself from all of them. So I mean, that would be quite spectacular, but it is looking more and more like that. So yeah, I mean, 6 months ago, a few people would have said this, but the appeals process is taking a long time. I mean, for instance, on the question of whether the president is immune from prosecution, that is currently with the DC Court of Appeals. It's 3 judges, 2 Democrat, 1 Republican, and it's taking a lot longer for them to bring down their decision than people expected. And if it takes too many more weeks, then that kind of automatically pushes all of the cases, much, much further back in the year. So on the question of timing, I think the Trump team is winning.